Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful morning, finally. Even though we have bipolar weather going on, right? One day it's cold, one day it's hot. One day it's an Arctic freeze, the other day it's like apocalypse from hell, so every day is something different. Alrighty, so today we'll continue with our discourse on mindfulness of breathing. Last class we've completed exercises 1 and 2. And then today we will start on exercises 3 and 4, but probably just work on the third exercise. So as usual, I will read the 16 practices. That way it gives us a few minutes here just to close our eyes and contemplate on these exercises as we go through them through this year's classes. 16 Anapanasati exercises. Breathing in a long breath, I know I am breathing in a long breath. Breathing out a long breath, I know I am breathing out a long breath. Breathing in a short breath, I know I am breathing in a short breath. Breathing out a short breath, I know I am breathing out a short breath. Breathing in, I am aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I am aware of my whole body. Breathing in, I calm my whole body. Breathing out, I calm my whole body. Breathing in, I feel joyful. Breathing out, I feel joyful. Breathing in, I feel happy. Breathing out, I feel happy. Breathing in, I'm aware of my mental formations. Breathing out, I'm aware of my mental formations. Breathing in, I calm my mental formations. Breathing out, I calm my mental formations. Breathing in, I'm aware of my mind. Breathing out, I'm aware of my mind. Breathing in, I make my mind happy. Breathing out, I make my mind happy. Breathing in, I concentrate my mind. Breathing out, I concentrate my mind. Breathing in, I liberate my mind. Breathing out, I liberate my mind. Breathing in, I observe the impermanent nature of all dharmas. Breathing out, I observe the impermanent nature of all dharmas or phenomena. Breathing in, I observe the disappearance of desire. Breathing out, I observe the disappearance of desire. Breathing in, I observe cessation. Breathing out, I observe cessation. Breathing in, I observe letting go. Breathing out, I observe letting go. So the practices are the first are the exercises I would cover today, which I'm probably only going to cover 1 of 2 because, I talk a lot. But I have a little clock here, so it's going to help me hopefully keep track of time. We'll see. I broke it. Anyway, so the third exercise is breathing in, I'm aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I'm aware of my whole body. So for the first 2 exercises that we've been covering, breathing in a long breath and breathing out a long breath, breathing in a short breath and breathing out a short breath, we've gone over how through our meditation that we are just being aware and mindful of our breathing, right? We're not necessarily controlling our breath for now. We are just being mindful of how our body is reacting to situations that arise in our mind, to distractions that are happening externally. Maybe we're hearing sounds or the door opening and closing, right? So all these little subtle changes, whether internally or externally, can change our breathing pattern, can change it either from being calm and short to long and heavy, or from long and heavy to short and fast, right? The changes in breathing is what we're really trying to focus on mainly while we're being mindful. So last class, or maybe the class before that, we went over the exercises of trying to find and pinpoint that focal point where we feel our breathing the strongest, right? whether it's entering our nose as we're breathing in, right? We're feeling the air, either the tip of our nose, the back of our nose, or our throat, through our lungs, or through our abdomen, right? We wanted to find a place where our breathing was the strongest, where we can concentrate the longest on, right? And that becomes our focal point. And from there, we observe our breathing. Is it slow? Is it fast? Is it coarse? Is it smooth? Is it fast? Etc., right? So hopefully, as we've practiced that, we've become to be able to recognize the changes in our breathing, not only when we're meditating, but as we're out in the world, right? Because usually, when we're talking to people, when we're doing any sort of physical activity or working, any time where we're not being still, our breathing for the most part is abnormal. It's not normalized. It's changing according to the activity that you're doing. It changes according to how much you're talking or how fast you're talking, right? Because if you're talking, you have a conversation with someone and you stop, right? Your breathing is a little slightly rapid because it's trying to catch up, because you've either talked yourself out of breath, or you're laughing so hard, or you're crying, or whatever it may be, right? Your breathing is not normalized. So if even when we're not meditating, and if something like that does happen, and we're practicing mindfulness as much as we can, then we can recognize that our breathing is not normal. And from there, depending on the situation, we can try to observe or look into our mind and see why our breathing isn't normalized. Why are we breathing hard or heavy or slow or whatever it may be? And from there, we can recognize what the situation is, right? Maybe it's not always so obvious, right? Like if you're having a conversation or you're doing physical activity or exercising, right? Those are obvious situations. But maybe you're just sitting at home or driving the car and something happens and all of a sudden your body gets tensed up, you're breathing heavy, and you're just like agitated or whatever it may be, right? Whether it's from a driver or something came up in your mind, right? If you're able to notice that subtle change in our breathing and in our body, we can help pinpoint the cause of that change. And by pinpointing that cause of that change, it helps us really get to know why that change even happened, right? So if we're now agitated because of something that came up in our mind, we can say, oh, this thing or this person causes me agitation. And from there, you can start contemplating why, right? And we go back to that why meditation. Why am I agitated? Why do they make me agitated? What did they do that caused me to be agitated, et cetera, right? You kind of go down the line. And we do that because we want to find the reason of that core root reason of why we feel that way so that we can eliminate it, right? Whether take it out of our lives completely, we can try to fix it, whatever it may be. We want to get rid of it, or at least get rid of the feeling that it causes us to be disturbed. Because that way, in the future, if we take care of it, the next time that arises in our mind, or that person or that situation comes into our mind, it doesn't agitate us anymore. We can be like, oh, it doesn't bother me that much, because you've taken care of the reason of why it bothers you. So that's really the point, also the point in this third exercise. Of breathing, I'm aware of my whole body. So through this discourse, and I'm oversimplifying this discourse to everyone, because even though it sounds simple, right, but it's also very technical, and it's very technically detailed in Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist practice. So I don't want to over-technicalize, is that even a word? It's probably not a word, right? I don't want to over-technicalize the teachings, because it'll confuse a lot of people who aren't necessarily Buddhists or practice Buddhism. So I'm oversimplifying it to a sort of mundane, just meditative practice for you. So that way it's simpler for everyone to be able to actually use and practice and meditate with. So in the whole discourse, it really just goes over two main types of bodies, right? Called kaya. Kaya means body, or mostly it just means body, like a collection of body, like a body of water, almost, right? So there's two types of kayas, or bodies, in this discourse: the flesh body, which is our actual body, and the breath body, our breathing, right? So we use those two different things to distinguish how we are working with ourselves and how we're reacting to things. So in the third exercise, it starts making us realize that our breath and our body go hand in hand. They have to work together. Because like we've mentioned, if you're doing physical activity, or if you're running or doing exercise, what happens to your body? It starts getting sore, right? It starts getting tired. You want to rest. And so from there, what happens to your breathing? Your breathing's now heavy, it's coarse, it's short and fast, right? So if you're able to, once we stop and able to calm and rest our body, our breathing does the same thing. Our breathing starts slowing down and starts calming down. And vice versa. If we're breathing too fast, right, maybe we are just laughing uncontrollably, right? And we've all maybe hopefully had that situation where we just can't stop laughing at something. And once we try to stop, we really have to start catching our breath, right? Our body becomes a little tired, a little sore from laughing so hard, right? So now we have to calm our body and calm our breathing. So really, as we're working through these exercises, it helps us recognize and see that our body and our breath are combined. They have to condition each other, right? One conditions the other. And so by recognizing that our body is in a state of discomfort, we will see the subtle changes and discomfort in our breathing as well, and vice versa. So when our body is calm, our breath is calm. If our body is tired and exhausted, our breathing is going to be too fast or too slow, right? And so it's the same thing, and really the biggest take away from here is just to be able to, and we've kind of already gone over this several times, is just, if we're meditating and a negative emotion arises, right, or something that's just discomforting or agitating, our body tends to tense up, right? We start to feel the tension in our shoulders or in our back, right? Because we're trying to fight the anger, but also hold it in. And so when we hold it in, we're tensing up, right? We're trying to control ourselves from lashing out or doing something, right? So when that happens, and if we're able to recognize it right then and there, then it won't really catch up to our breathing, right? Because if our breathing is pretty calm and steady, our body is going to feel the agitation of the negative thought or feeling first before our breath is changed. So once we feel the tension and the change in our body, if we're able to catch that change right then and there, it won't transfer over to our breathing, and it won't change our breathing. So if we're able to catch it as we feel our body tense or change or shift or whatever, we can say, hey, what's going on now? What's going on in my mind? And take what's going on and address it and let it go and get rid of it. If you're not able to catch it there, then it starts going into our breath body, our breath kaya, right? And it starts changing our breathing. So now you're agitated, so now you take a big sigh, right? Or you start breathing heavy or breathing slowly and fast because you're trying to not lash out and just jump up and jump someone because they're snoring or something during meditation. I don't know. Right? So you have another chance there to catch what's going on from your breathing. And so we have micro stages of where we can catch the subtle changes. And if we're able to catch them before it goes to the next stage, it's easier for us to look into our mind and see what's going on, to either subdue the situation, change our thinking, change our mentality or perception, whatever it may be, before it moves on to something bigger and greater and more difficult to change. Because eventually what happens is, if you don't catch this bad thinking or this negative thinking soon enough, it starts going into our mind and it starts becoming this idea, this perception that we have, this bad perception, right? And if we're not able to catch it there, then it starts becoming something that's ingrained in our mind. Now it's a habit. It's a habit that when we see something or someone that we don't like, we automatically have a negative thing to say about them, right? We don't look forward to seeing them. We don't want to talk to them. We wish ill will on them, whatever it may be, right? So it starts becoming a bad habit. And when that happens, now you're lashing out. Now you're saying things bad to them. Now you're talking behind their back. Maybe now you're slashing their tires. I don't know, whatever it may be, right? So you're causing negative, bad karma. So it's not just going to influence you in this life. It may influence you in future lives too, because now you're building up that negative karma. So really the whole point of this whole discourse and being mindful of our breathing is to get to know ourselves. Because a lot of times our perceptions come into creation when we are not doing anything for the most part, right? Because usually if we're working or if we're watching a movie or a TV, we're occupied with what we're doing. That is our object of meditation. That's our object of concentration, is our work or the movie or cooking or whatever it may be, right? So it's times when we're really not doing anything. Maybe we're just sitting in the car, we're a passenger, we're just laying on the couch, we're sifting through Facebook or whatever. These are the times where a lot of our thinking and perception starts brewing in our mind, where we start making up these ideas and perceptions and biases and ignorances about things. So we have a lot of opportunity, right? We have more not doing anything time of the day for the most part than doing something, right? Because for the most part, we only work about 8 hours, give or take, right, a day. And then maybe you're spending another hour or two cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maybe another hour or two doing some chores, whatever, right? So that's only, 12, 13 hours a day. So you have another few more hours before you have to sleep. So you have a lot of opportunity to start creating bad thinking, bad ideas, bad perceptions. And so when we practice mindfulness of breathing and we are truly mindful of our own thoughts and ideas and even the patterns of breathing and intentions are. I lost my track of thought because my phone was ringing. What is going on in my mind? What is causing my body to be agitated? What is causing my mind to be agitated, right? You start questioning. Really, that's a big part of our practice, especially meditation, is to question things, right? Because ultimately, we're trying to find the ultimate truth, right? That's the core of Buddhist teaching, is to practice and find the ultimate truth in reality, in things, right? Because, and I think I've mentioned this before, a lot of our ideas and perceptions are subjective ones, right? They're very personal. I think this bell is pretty because this bell is pretty. I can say this bell is pretty because I think this bell is pretty to me. But to someone else, this bell can be ugly. It's black, it's small, it's denty. There's incense ash inside of it, right? So it can be something that's ugly to them, but beautiful to me, right? So who's right? Who is correct in saying this is either beautiful or ugly? Same thing with these flowers, same thing with the statue, right? So my idea of beauty and ugliness is different from someone else's idea of beauty and ugliness. So who's right? Right? There's no right answer. No one's right or wrong. Things just are, right? And that's really the conclusion that we want to try to get to things, is things just are. They're neither good or bad, beautiful or ugly. They just are. And so when we see that and when we contemplate on that and recognize that, it's easier to look at certain situations and circumstances more openly, with an open mind, right? Because let's say you're at work and on your team, your boss gave you the power to fire someone, right? And they're like, hey, I can't make this decision for me. And then it just so happens that the person that they're talking about is someone you don't like, right? So for most people, they're like, oh yeah, go ahead and fire them because I don't like them. I don't want to associate with them. I don't want to see them every day. Good riddance. But really, even though you don't like them, they're an excellent worker. They do their job very well. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. They don't miss work, right? They're a good employee. You just happen to not like them, right? So your bad perception, your negative feelings towards them is blocking the trueness of that person, of what they are, which is a good employee, right? A good person. Maybe not a good person, but at least a good employee, right? You just don't think they're a good person. So during our meditation practice, and as we're practicing, and as we go through the training, right? I've mentioned before that when a thought arises, or when you get this or hear a distraction like a noise, to simply give it a label, right? So when a door opens, you're not thinking, who's opening the door, right? Because now we have the sensors, the security sensors that say back door open or front door open. So when you're meditating and you hear that, if you're not a well-practiced person, you're going to think, who opened this door? Who is ruining my meditation practice? Who dares to come in the middle of the session, right? Et cetera, whatever it may be. So now you're using your own bias, your own feelings and thoughts about it to judge the sound versus just saying door was open or I heard sound, right? You need to label it what it is, not what you think or want it to be. And so when we do that outside of practice, of meditation practice, and we do that for our everyday life, it's easier to make better decisions. It's easier to see things with a more positive light, where things are not very biased on our end. So when we hear the door open, just give it a mental label, door open, or the dog barking, just say dog, or bark, or noise, or the bird, say bird, or noise, whatever it may be, right? So when we give it that quick label, we take away the power that it potentially has to create a bad idea or bad perception. Because if you don't, then it creates a habit that you're just you're just giving a bad rep to everything, right? So every speedy car is a bad racer, a bad driver. They think they're a racer, right? So everyone that cuts you off in traffic, they're automatically a terrible driver. They're a horrible person. You wish you had a bazooka and just wanted to shoot them out of the road, because that's what I used to think like I just wish I had a giant bazooka. Right? So every person that cuts you off is a bad driver, is a horrible person. Everyone that interrupts you during cooking or working doesn't respect your time, doesn't respect your space. Anyone that calls you in the middle of workday doesn't respect you that you're working, etc., right? The list is endless. And so if we practice mindfulness and we become mindful and say, things are going to happen. Things just are. These drivers that cut me off aren't bad people, aren't bad drivers. Maybe they have a legitimate reason to be speeding. Maybe they have to rush someone to the hospital. Maybe they have to rush to the hospital to see someone that's dying. We don't know, right? But what we typically do is create stories on their behalf to make our idea of them good or bad, right? When we see something happen, or like an accident, for instance, and we see maybe just two-car, right? It's a two-car accident, and we see And we can either judge either the front car or the back car was in fault, right? So we create this whole story of, oh, maybe they were speeding too fast, and then when this car was braking, he didn't brake on time or didn't brake hard enough, right? We create a story for these people, and we do that constantly, all the time, right? If we're people watching, what typically happens when we people watch is we create stories, right? I used to people watch in college all the time because I would have like a 2-hour gap. So me and my friends would go to Starbucks, get a coffee, and sit outside and create stories for every single person that walked by. And so what happens, and this is a true story, what happened was this one girl who came to school almost every day in like cosplay, right? She would always be wearing some sort of costume of some sort, right? But consistently, she would either have some sort of headband with like ears on it, or something that went into her pant to make like a tail every single day. No joke. And so one semester, she was in one of my classes, and my first instinct or thought was to say, "Hey, animal girl," because that's what she looked like to me. It was an animal, because she had ears and a tail every day. I didn't want to know her name. I didn't want to know her story. I just knew her for being this weird person who wore tails and ears to school every day, in college by all places. So we tend to create these stories and ideas for everything, and then when the time comes where we have to either acknowledge it or face it, we don't care about the true story. We already have a story in our head, and that's the final plan, right? Same thing with first impressions. Sometimes a bad first impression, if someone makes a bad first impression to us, that's it. They are no longer anything but that, right? And it could be for the employee that we want to fire so quickly because their first impression was a bad one, so anything they do after that doesn't matter. And so when we have the chance to fire them, we're going to fire them right away because what they did on the first day we met them, we didn't like, regardless of their work habit, regardless of how good of a worker they are or how much knowledge they have, we don't care. So we need to get out of that habit, and when we get out of that habit, that really gives us the opportunity to obviously become better people because we're not judging so quickly. We're not creating so much bias and false perceptions so quickly towards people and things. So as we go through these exercises and as we become mindful of our change in breathing, we become mindful in the change that our body creates, whether it tenses up, or even when our legs or feet fall asleep, right? That's a small change that we want to acknowledge and not be angry about, because a lot of people tend to ruin their whole session because their leg is sleeping or the foot's falling asleep, and you're either thinking, I'm sitting wrong, or I'm meditating incorrectly, or I'm not doing this right, or this is not for me, I don't like it because my foot's falling asleep, right? Whatever it may be, right? Regardless of what you say, for the most part, nobody wants their feet falling asleep because it is quite uncomfortable. And I mean, my feet still fall asleep. I've been meditating for over a decade, and it still falls asleep. It's something that you can change or prevent from not happening. You just have to know how to work with it. So for me, I always tell people to suck it up because it's going to fall asleep and you're going to feel that tingling for a few minutes and it will eventually go away, right? It's not the end of the world. It's very impermanent discomfort. So once we get past those few minutes of sometimes intense discomfort, the pain will go away, right? You just have to allow it to be, allow it to come and go. Just like the feelings and the distractions that come up, allow them to be, allow them to come and go. Don't mess with them, don't entertain them, don't add to that story, just acknowledge that it's there and it'll go away. And then for the first two practices, when we're breathing in and out, long and short, those are instances where I mentioned to don't worry about controlling the breath. Just breathe normally, and whatever happens, be mindful of it, right? But sometimes, especially in the third practice, when we are observing our body, if our body is angry, for instance, right, then we become uncomfortable, our body becomes uncomfortable, and then our breathing becomes uncomfortable, right? Sometimes and we've probably all been in situations where when we are just very angry, right, our body almost automatically wants to lash out, right? We either want to attack the person, we want to throw something at them, we just naturally, maybe naturally or unnaturally, just want to lash out. And so, and when that happens, then our breathing changes. And so if we're sitting in meditation, for instance, and something arises that made us feel angry or uncomfortable, this is the time where it is okay to control our breath, because we do want to regulate our breath, right? Like I mentioned earlier, if we're finishing exercising, our body's tired, it's trying to cool down and relax, and our body's the same thing, our breathing is the same thing, because our breathing is fast and short and it's heavy. So these are times where it's okay to take those controlled deep breaths and try to control your breathing and slow it down, right? Because a lot of time we hear it when we're angry or when we're anxious or nervous, right? We always hear people say, just take a few deep breaths, right? Take a few deep breaths, you'll feel better. And it's true. So if we are feeling agitated or angry or nervous or anxious or whatever it may be, whatever is causing the body and the breathing to change beyond normal breathing and feeling, then it's okay to control the breathing, to control and take a deep breath, or try to regulate your breath again, right? Because it becomes irregular or abnormal when we are in situations of anger or frustration or nervousness, anxiousness, whatever it may be. So for me, for example, I'm using myself as an example. When I first sit down to meditate, our breathing, and for anybody really, our breathing is typically above normal, just slightly, because we're adjusting our seating, right? We're sitting down and we're adjusting our body, we're moving things around, so our body is doing some sort of physical activity, physical exercise. So our breathing will be slightly abnormal. And so when we first sit to meditate, it is okay to take those few deep breaths just to get our breathing regulated back to normal again, right? And so it's the same thing, you want to do the same thing when distractions arise. Because it could be just the sound, right? You hear sound, sometimes we hear the dogs barking or the peacocks honking or whatever it may be, right? And those sounds are frustrating or can be frustrating to some people. So when something that's frustrating happen to you while we were meditating, you're typically going to take a big sigh and just mentally think, oh, that sound is so annoying. I'm going to go and put those dogs down. I'm going to go open the cage for the birds, let them out because they're so annoying, whatever it may be, right? So that's also a good sign to notice that when we do sigh, right, sometimes we do that, we're not completely aware of what our body does, especially when we sigh. There goes the peacocks. See, I'm telling you. So a good sign is when you sigh, that should be a mental note. Say, hey, my breathing changed. Even it's a sigh. Even though if your breathing really didn't change from short and shallow to hard and heavy, right? It may have not that benefit, it may not be that big of an extreme, but a sigh is still a change in breathing. So make note of that change, and you can ask yourself, why did I sigh? Sometimes it's because we're forcing our breathing to be short or long, right? So our body, when we sigh, because our body's trying to compensate for the lack of or the too much air that we have. So it could just be that, or it could be that there's a lingering distraction there that you're not completely aware of, that you're not able to pay attention to or recognize. And so when we do sigh, take note of it. Ask yourself why. Why did I sigh? Because when we do have very calm, short, shallow breaths, that's actually a pretty good thing. We want that for the most part. Because when we're really super concentrated, then it's going to feel like we're not even breathing sometimes because it's so short and shallow. That, for the most part, is a sign that we have pretty good concentration going on, right? We still may have some distractions and some thoughts arise, but we're able to recognize and let it go, right? So that's okay. And remember, just because you're thinking and you're being distracted doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. You're doing something wrong if you're entertaining that thought, you're entertaining that distraction, and you're giving it a story and you're continuing on and on with it. That's not a good thing. But if you become distracted, or a thought arises and you recognize it, right? The quicker you recognize it, the better. But it may just continue to go on for maybe 30 seconds, a minute or two, and then you realize, hey, I'm thinking. Acknowledge the thought and move on with your meditation. So it's okay to think. It's going to happen. Just don't allow yourself to entertain that thought and continue with your session. Okay, I've already talked too much. So I hope my point came across successfully here. I've kind of merged a lot of what I said today with the previous exercises, because really they all kind of mix into one, especially the first 4 exercises. They really work together hand in hand. And the first 4 exercises are really to help you recognize that our flesh body and our breathing body go hand in hand. They condition each other. If your body is uncomfortable, your breathing is going to be uncomfortable. If your body is calm, your breath is going to be calm, right? And so we want to recognize those 2 changes when we're meditating. So sometimes even, right, what happens here is if our foot's falling asleep, that's our flesh body becoming uncomfortable. So now your breathing is going to change. You're going to sigh, you're going to breathe, your breath is going to change because now you're moving your body, you're trying to adjust and move your foot away, right? So once your body is calm, your mind is going to be calm, your breath is going to be calm. In the same way, when we're distracted, if a thought arises and we're being distracted and we're entertaining the thought, or we become angry, now our body is becoming uncomfortable, it's tensing up, you're trying to adjust it, you're sighing. So when you calm your mind and you get rid of those thoughts, then your body also calms and gets rid of the discomfort. So we're really just trying to be aware and recognize and accept and acknowledge that our body and our breathing condition go hand in hand. So it helps us recognize that something is going on. If our body's uncomfortable, our mind and breathing is going to be uncomfortable, and we can talk to ourselves and be like, hey, what's going on here? And vice versa. If our mind is distracted, our body becomes distracted, and we can recognize and see, hey, what's going on? So just recognize if there's a discomfort or a change in the body, there's going to be a discomfort and change in the breathing. There's a discomfort and change in the breathing, there's going to be a discomfort and change in the body. And so we want to recognize that these 2 go hand in hand and work together and condition each other. Okay, I'm going to stop. I can go on, but I'm going to stop. Okay, any questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? I know y'all were waiting for that. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts. Yeah? Okay. Y'all are masters of meditation now, I'm assuming. So it is 10:45. We'll just do 20 minutes in case y'all do have questions at the end. Okay, 20 minutes, that's fine. Okay. So, get in your posture, adjust your body, move around. good and productive session for everyone. I only sighed once as I had to wake up. I only noticed today how quiet it is in here when everything's like silent. Say what? Oh yeah. Hear all the pops. I'm like, wait, what is that? Other than that, it's pretty quiet in here. It's great, except for the animals. If only it was complete silence. Have you seen, I think it's in New York or somewhere, it's like in some Microsoft office where like the quietest room in the world, where you go in and it's completely isolated and people really can't stand more than like 10, 15, 20 seconds. I'm like, I want to test that. I want to see how long I can last in there. So apparently you can like hear your blood just run through your veins, and you can hear your heartbeat as if it's like right into your ear. I think it's pretty cool. I would want to try it. All our mental friends will be there with us. All right. Cool. Okay. Any last minute questions, concerns? No? Okay. Well, until next week. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.